What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I upload to the YouTube channel. Two significant games to cover here that took place on Sunday, starting with Manchester City 1, Liverpool 1. This game went back and forth. City were on top early. Liverpool had a really large spell where you thought maybe if they didn't capitalize, it was going to come back to haunt them. Ultimately, they get the penalty to cancel out John Stones' clever set piece goal. Like I said, ends 1-1. A completely fair result. Both teams could have won this game. Luis Diaz had a couple chances in particular for Liverpool. Darwin Nunez did his thing and created a bunch of chaos and was generally really good. On the City side, you had the really weird situation where Kelleher headed the ball off of Phil Foden and then off the crossbar. And then Jeremy Doku came in, also hit the woodwork. This really could have gone either way. So ultimately, it's a fair result. Liverpool were probably better overall, but it took a while for them to get into the game. They didn't capitalize on their chances. And so this last matchup between Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp fittingly ends with no winner. I don't have too much on this game. Give Liverpool credit. Between their back four and their goalkeeper, there was one preferred starter out there, and that was Virgil van Dijk. They found a way to keep City in check. Haaland was really nowhere to be found. Kevin De Bruyne got subbed off, didn't have a great game. Gotta give those guys credit. Jurgen Klopp continues to find a way that whoever comes in is able to step up, deliver those performances. It's been a trademark all the way, right? You look at the important goals that the Divock Origis and the Takumi Minaminos are scoring for this team. And the performances that Joe Gomez will sometimes put in. It's just part of what this team is. I want to focus more on the bigger picture for the title race, though. Because like I said, the right result is what we got. These two teams are so evenly matched. Neither of them were phenomenal. Neither of them were terrible. But Liverpool came into this game with the upper hand. And I talked about this leading into this game and kind of setting the scene the last couple weeks. City were the team that needed to win this. Not necessarily to save their title hopes or something. But here's the situation as I'm recording here on March 10th. If Arsenal beat Manchester City, and I know that's a big if, but if they do so, because Arsenal are currently winning the Premier League, that title is theirs to lose, by definition. They are in control of their own destiny. It is in their hands. If Arsenal don't beat Manchester City, Liverpool are the team that has everything in their hands. Manchester City, at this point, with 10 games to go, needs both to beat Arsenal and for Liverpool to slip up. And what has happened in both other Liverpool Manchester City title races, and what generally happens when you have the upstart, the underdog, whatever you want to call them, trying to take down the favorite. And I've talked about this before. One of the parts of the formula to actually pull off the upset and win a league when you're not expected to is to play from ahead. Dortmund have had this problem when they've given Bayern some trouble. They're always just trying to hang in there, and then they end up, 3, 5 points short, something like that. Liverpool took City to the wire twice. And what happened in the final stretch of the season? City matched or exceeded Liverpool's point total by reeling off a bunch of wins and found a way to win that last game, one time in very dramatic fashion. But it was always Liverpool needed City to do something other than win. It's what made Dortmund's title collapse last season so heartbreaking, is that they got to the point where it was in their hands and they didn't need anything from Bayern. All they had to do was win the game. And Bayern still tried to help them, and they couldn't do it because they couldn't get that win. That's not to say that City are out of this. Absolutely not. Of course, they're right there. My point is this. If you want a formula for a thrilling title race that doesn't feel inevitable and doesn't feel like you're just hoping against hope that City does something uncharacteristic, this is what you want. You want City to be the team having to play from behind, needing the help. Because if Liverpool run the table, City aren't winning the Premier League. We're to the point in the season where we can have that kind of conversation. Liverpool don't have to play City again. Liverpool don't have to play Arsenal again. If Arsenal find a way to beat City, or even to get a draw, that might be enough that we're talking about this coming down to Arsenal and Liverpool. This is why, until City actually took control, I refused to budge, and I did this last season as well. It could very well be that a month from now, we're talking about City as the favorites and the leaders, and now it feels completely different. But until that actually happens, until they go to Anfield and win, which they didn't, I am still looking at this from who is in control of their own destiny. And you can say, I expect that by the end to be City. That's completely fair. But right now, it's not. They're third on the list. If you're a neutral who just wants to see something different in this league and wants to see this go down to the wire, that's the best thing you could possibly ask for. That's what I was really thinking about coming out of this game. Because Liverpool didn't get all 3 points to where you feel like maybe they're kind of got that slight edge over everybody else. And City didn't win where you feel like, oh boy, here we go. And Arsenal get a goal from Kai Havertz to beat Brentford. Then they get the draw. And so Arsenal are sitting here winning the league. This is setting up absolutely perfectly to be a all-time great title race headed down the stretch here in the final couple months of the season. Second, CONCACAF W Gold Cup. The U.S. gets the job done, beats Brazil 1-0 on a Lindsey Horan goal to lift the trophy. Was it a spectacular performance? No. Was it good enough? Yeah. First half was a little bit shaky. Second half was a little bit better. They did a good job of exploiting the space and spreading out Brazil's 3 center backs. That was clearly a tactical emphasis. They did a pretty good job of that. Sam Coffey was really, really good in this game. I'm a big fan of hers. I wanted to see what she looked like in this setup. I firmly believe there's an argument she should have been on the World Cup team, or at least given a chance to prove that she belonged on that team, because she didn't really get the opportunity. And so I'm happy that she's getting these chances now, and haven't been overly impressed so far. But I was really impressed in this game. Because she was all over the place, intercepting passes, winning the ball back. And you know what she gives you from a tempo-setting facilitation standpoint. The U.S. has got to figure out this number 6 question. It's the one thing that has not gotten enough attention that I've talked about time and time again. There are very few players in the world who can play that position by themselves. It's why a lot of teams play with a double pivot. Julie Ertz was that kind of player. She was that good. And all of a sudden, it's been a problem since she initially left the team and since Vlatko Andonovski decided not to play her there at the World Cup. I don't know that Sam Coffey is the solution. I was beginning to doubt that she was, and that's too early. She's only had a few games. She's barely even began her professional career. Let's not jump to conclusions, but I was less confident, that's the way I'll put it, after the first couple games of this tournament than I was heading into the tournament. But now I'm starting to wonder if she really might be part of the solution here. Emily Sonnett also should have something to say about that when we get to the Olympics. I don't have a bigger conversation about this right now. But that was the one standout performer for me that was worth mentioning. The bigger picture point I want to get to is this. There was so much criticism coming out of the World Cup after that Sweden game. And I emphasized that you have to separate the Sweden game from the group stage because they were not the same thing by any stretch of the imagination. The U.S. were awful in the group stage. They probably should have went home. That is indisputable. All the criticism is warranted. A different team showed up in that knockout stage game. And there seemed to be some acknowledgement of that, but generally the overall theme was, what a disaster, historic loss because they've never exited this early, which of course is going to be part of the story. But they were far and away the better team in that game. And the criticism that you can levy, that you can direct at them, was that they didn't take their chances, right? If you don't score, you can't have a better outcome than a penalty shootout, and now you're just going into who's better at PKs on a random day. And things like the ball popping up and inches over the, centimeters over the goal line can happen and send you home from a World Cup. You're putting yourself in that position if you don't put the ball in the net. And the U.S. should have put the ball in the net, and they didn't. That's the fair criticism. So moving into this tournament, you have to kind of choose between the results and the performances. Because if you want to come out of the Gold Cup saying, yeah, they won, but they didn't look great, they lost to Mexico, went to a penalty shootout against Canada, that's fine. But you can't be criticizing the performance against Sweden then. You can't have it both ways. They took their chances in this tournament. And perhaps most importantly, they found ways to score goals. This team has not been good in attack in the lead up to the World Cup and at the World Cup. They created chances, the ball didn't go in the net. In that way, the Sweden game was a very, very fitting ending. They scored goals in the group stage. They scored goals against Colombia. They scored goals against Canada. Lindsey Horan scored a goal in the final. That's a really, really good sign. And when you succeed in tournaments, especially at this point, and I'm talking World Cups and Olympics, right? Major tournaments. And the Gold Cup as well. But applying this to the most significant things the U.S. women's national team is going to do here. It looks like this tournament. It looks like the way the U.S. won. They're not going to steamroll everybody. You're going to have some good games, like against Colombia. You're going to have some weird games, like the one against Canada, that shouldn't have been played, but they find a way, give up a late goal, go ahead in extra time, concede, win the penalty shootout, right? There's always kind of that one game. We talk about this with the NCAA tournament coming up, too. Tournaments, I should say. Generally, if you win a national championship, there's one game you got to just kind of survive. Same thing with the World Cup. That's how knockout tournaments work. And it's a lot of, can you be defensively sound? And when you get your opportunities, can you convert? Can you execute at a high level? This is why Real Madrid have so much success in the Champions League. And this week, these two legs against Leipzig are a great illustration of this. They were bad. Leipzig were clearly better over the two legs. But what happened? Brahim Diaz delivered in the first leg, and you had that beautiful combination between Jude Bellingham and Vinicius in the second leg. That was all you needed. That's how you win in knockout tournaments, where you can't control the circumstances, where things don't balance out over an entire season. And so I would rather see the U.S. win this way, especially with these young players, because this is what it's going to be like if you're going to have success at the Olympics, if you're going to have success at the next World Cup. You're not blowing teams out 3, 4, 5-0 all the time. Anybody who's expecting that right now just does not appreciate how good this sport is at the highest level, and how much progress so many countries have made. It's not just that there are teams that have the same kind of talent as the U.S. anymore. It was one of the big stories of the World Cup, right? Was how good everybody was. Where you can't take anything for granted anymore. And so to come out of this tournament with these young players getting some experience, with Jaden Shaw having all this confidence, with Alex Morgan, who was not particularly great in the final, but was good in this tournament, making it clear that she does not intend to have her career end quietly. Alyssa Nair gets some confidence back. Sophia Smith gets some confidence back. You get back to winning. All of that. That's really, really important. That's really, really good stuff. That is a huge positive to take into the Emma Hayes era. It's not going to be pretty. Tournaments don't work that way. And so, yeah, it would have been nice to see it be a little bit more convincing. I'm not sure we learned too much. And part of that was that there was nothing to take away from the Canada game because the field was unplayable. And so you've got this Brazil game, which it's a final. They're usually not pretty. They usually look like that. One team makes a play that sort of sets the tone for the game. Credit to Lindsay Horan for stepping up, wearing the captain's armband. Emily Fox delivers a good cross. And they held up defensively, which is something that they have consistently done through all of the struggles of the past couple years. They've been an excellent defensive team. The issues have been on the other side of the field, which is sort of strange considering how many great attacking players this team has. But that's where we're at. They got back into some kind of offensive groove in this tournament. Not that they were blowing teams away, but they consistently scored goals. That is a huge step in the right direction. And who knows how much of this carries over to the Olympics. But this could have been, and I talked about this after the Colombia game last week, this could have been a recipe for disaster if they had followed up the World Cup and then the loss to Mexico with a really bad knockout stage and lost to Colombia or gotten drilled by Canada or something. But they showed up, they delivered, they answered the bell, they persevered. You got to give them credit. Because if you want to look at the round of 16 and say that's not good enough, that's fair. It takes the Sweden game out of context. But they've got the trophy. So you got to give them credit for that. If you're going to just look at it in terms of the results, which is something I don't like doing, because to me the process is incredibly, incredibly important, and how it looks is incredibly, incredibly important, particularly in knockout tournaments. But some of that criticism that was directed after the Sweden game, not about the World Cup overall, because to me that was all valid. I had plenty of things to say as well. But after the Sweden game, specifically about just the binary point in which the U.S. exited, they got the job done here. Got to give them credit. You can't have a double standard here and say they won, but we're past that point. It is hard to win at this level, no matter who the competition is. Ask Brazil at the World Cup how hard it is to win, no matter who the competition is. The state of this team from a vibes and confidence standpoint, to me, dramatically improved with this tournament. They got to just kind of let the World Cup go, get back into a competitive environment, and remember what it feels like to win, to be the U.S. women's national team, to look and feel like themselves again. Mexico game aside. But I think we just need to go to a point where we're accepting that's going to happen sometimes. Because it's only going to get more and more difficult to dominate this sport. That goes for everybody. England, Spain, US, whoever. Because of how many really good teams there are now and how good everybody is getting. It's a great thing. It makes it more challenging. You've got to adjust your expectations accordingly. But now Emma Hayes has a foundation to build on. She is not trying to pick the pieces up of a team that had a historically bad World Cup and then went to the Gold Cup and didn't perform well and lost in the quarterfinals or something after losing a group stage game. She is taking a team that is continuing to grow in confidence now. That, to the extent that it's possible, can put the World Cup behind them, because now that latest memory, that feeling they have is winning this tournament. That is really important. That's all I have to say on that. U.S. women's national team get the job done. Win the CONCACAF W Gold Cup. That is all I have for this video. There will not be a video next week as I will be traveling. I will do 5 things from the week like normal though. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.